This is unbelievable. Everywhere you look, there's something going on.
I see trees and mountains and even waterfalls.
There's even an eyeball looking back at you.
The artist who made this called it Innerland, and it sounds like you've already discovered some of the reasons why.
It's worth getting down on your hands and knees and peering into the piece, because it's a whole world of landscapes. Some of them are real, some of them are magical landscapes that never existed outside artist Eric Hilton's imagination and the piece itself.
It is so amazing. I wish I could shrink myself down and go play inside it. I could get lost for days.
With all those cubes laid out next to each other, it looks like one big optical illusion.
The quality of the glass is incredible. It's that high lead glass which has a brilliance to it that is unmatchable. It's also a wonderful piece of precision craftsmanship. The quality of the cutting and of the engraving is about as fine as you could possibly get. You know, it takes a master glass cutter to produce a perfect cube like any of these.
When you pair up superb material and craftsmanship with a design that is filled with imagination and fantasy, you really do get an inner land.